Ang samot-saring isyong ibinabato dapat sa kanyang pamilya. Nananatiling matibay at may paninindigan para sa bayan. Bitbit ang mga pangakong pagbabago para sa ekonomiya ng bansa. Trabaho para sa mga Pilipino. Murang kuryente. Industrialisasyon. Kalidad na edukasyon. Reforma sa iba't ibang sektor. At pagkakaisa ng sambayan.
Huwag mong likutin muli.
Ang kanyang kampanya.
Magkano kumagin?
Ang Republika ng Pilipinas, sinabi ko na ako'y tatakbo dahil ang aking layunin, ang aking pangarap para sa ating bansa ay pagkain sa muli sa pagandahin po natin ang ating minamahal na bansang Pilipinas. Sama-sama po tayong buhay.
Marcos na Marcos ang bibig
Sa
salita.
Partido Federal ng Pilipinas. Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr.
Wala naman yung kamay naman. Ano ba naman? Kalit ka dyan. Kahit mga bahay, ako rin. Maririnig niya. Hindi na po narinig. Umalis ka dyan, nagugulo. Ba't kasi nakaharang daw yan? Nanonood siya eh. Kamukha yun ni Kuya Alex. Ginigin ko. Nakaka-goosebumps naman.
You may now sit down, Senator Marcos. Good evening.
Good evening.
We may request the audience to please sit down so we can start the program. Everyone, can we ask everyone to please sit down so we can start the program?
Hindi magkamayang ng tao.
Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you. Okay. Senator Marcos, you have the floor and the panelists will be asking you questions.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Marcos.
Good meeting you, ma'am.
If this were, I've never been to a campaign rally, but if this looks like it, and maybe multiplied so many times over, I can imagine what you're feeling is like euphoria, isn't it? Because we're not even involved and we're feeling euphoric here.
It's very encouraging, ma'am. That's true.
Okay, this is the second time we're going through this. But this time it will be banter. Nothing aggressive nor belligerent. You have the thickest portfolio here. Like I counted more than 50 pages which were submitted to the network and which were given to us. So like I have 1,000 questions, but I have 3 other colleagues here.
1,000 questions.
Maybe I'll ask something which is right in my alley. And I think I have asked this also in my post in the social media. And post-Ukraine, assuming that you have a peace agreement within the next 2 weeks, which is more likely, do you see a new political and economic order? But this time, you have other political actors like Moscow, Beijing, and even Tehran.
Yes.
What's your take on that?
There will be a new one. Because I have, I think, watching Ukraine and seeing the developments, and which are not exactly going the way of that the President Putin would have wanted it to. I suspect there will be domestic implications to whatever the peace agreement is going to be. I hope you're right, man, that it will be done in 2 weeks, because we are the whole entire world is suffering. But there will be a very big change, because the how do you say, the idea, I think some of the analysts have said, I don't know if you agree with this, is that President Putin is trying to reconstruct or recreate the Soviet Union under another name. So perhaps this was his move. Should he weaken as a political figure in his own country, in Russia, then certainly the policy, that policy of trying to gain territory through whatever means, as he says, because to provide for him a buffer to NATO, whatever the reason might truly be. I think that will have to be re-studied by whoever will be most dominant in Russian domestic politics after Putin. So yes, I believe there will be a new world order, and I think I am certain that Tehran and Beijing are watching very, very closely what will happen to Ukraine. There will be a geopolitical balance of power. It also depends on what the reaction of the EU and the United States will be. I think the United States we can predict fairly accurately. EU is in a more difficult spot simply because they are highly dependent for their energy to Russia, and how they will balance that. I know that the President Biden has just signed with the EU a deal to supply from the United States and from other countries 15 billion tons of gas, which will cover some of the needs of the EU. But again, that's not something that can instantly be made, to instantly be applied. There will be a transition period, because it is a very large economic infrastructure that has been developed for Europe to take advantage of the gas supplies out of Russia. These are all terribly large forces, and inevitably will change them.
Yeah, but it seems like you have a more dire scenario, future scenario in mind. But what I have used really is from a content analytical perspective, using events data analysis, meaning I'm paying attention to the verbs being used by the negotiators. And this is not Pollyannish, by the way, Mr. Marcos. It's just that I feel that Putin will not allow the conflict to spill over. It will encapsulate within the Ukraine, a conflict area. And that, yes, I still believe that within the next 2 weeks you have a peace agreement.
I sincerely hope so. Because misunderstandings, mistakes can occur. With Poland being right there on the border of Ukraine, we already have had reports of missiles that mistakenly flew into Poland. And these are the kind of things that we have to be very careful about. I think maybe that is one thing that they can agree upon, Russia and the West, as we refer to it often.
Marcus, earlier, I don't know if you were around already when I asked questions about the projected state visit of Vladimir Putin here in the Philippines. Because the Duterte administration has only so many more breaths to take before the end of their regime, of their tenure. When you become president, will you honor that invitation that Duterte had given to him to do a state visit? Not just a visit, a state visit.
Well, certainly. Why not? We have diplomatic relations with Moscow. We should continue to honor that agreement that we have with Russia, and we must continue to again cultivate the relationships that are beneficial to the country. And it's not, because as long as we make our position very clear that self-determination is an important principle as far as the Philippines is concerned, and in that context, then we can still speak on many other subjects with Russia.
Yeah, so that means you are not telegraphing something to the United States of America by welcoming Vladimir Putin in a state visit.
It need not be Russia or Vladimir Putin, any country. I think that would like to come and visit, and we would feel that there is something beneficial to be gained by furthering, strengthening relationships with our two countries is something that we should always be open to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Marcos. Ang tanong ko po ay ito, ang nabanggit niyo po ang phrase na New World Order na sa tingin niyo ay maaaring mangyari pagkatapos ng peace treaty between Ukraine and Russia. We see that the world will be restructured around a new framework or a new geopolitical order. So my question is this, I hope that you realize the burden or the special task that you have as a future chief architect of our foreign policy. Because in the past drawing of world orders, the Philippines never played a role in determining its position in that world order. For example, between the wars of Spain and the United States, it's the United States that defined our position in that new world order. When the United Nations was instituted after post-World War II, we were still at the coattails of the United States. But now we are an independent country. So my question is, when this new world order that you think would happen after a peace treaty gets concluded between Ukraine and Russia, how will you position our country in this new geopolitical order?
It very clearly will depend on what the exit strategy will be for the West, for EU, and for Putin in the peace agreement that we hope they will sign. What the nature of that agreement will be. Will it be status quo? The forces that are in Ukraine, the Russian forces and Belarusian forces that are already in Ukraine, will they just stay where they are, status quo? Will they be told to withdraw? I only say that because it is very important to Putin's position domestically. He is in a very precarious place because it has not gone according to plan. I suspect that he was hoping that it would be a similar situation as it was in Crimea, where they pretty much just walked in, very little resistance. But then they prepared Crimea for a long time. They were helping the rebel groups, the Russian-speaking groups, and they were developing them. And they built a corridor on the east side of Crimea, within which the Russians could cross the border very easily. That hasn't been the case in Ukraine. And so, depending on how it is viewed, the peace treaty that we hope will come, it depends on how it is viewed by the local domestic political scenarios in Russia itself. That whatever the reaction will be to Putin will fix one of the variables in the geopolitical new world order. So we still have to wait to see what happens. I'm sure China is waiting with bated breath to see what's going to happen here. Tehran, I'm sure, as the professor mentioned, is clearly a player in this regard. And in the Middle East now, so far it has not affected the Middle East in any way so far. But maybe if it works out for Russia, if it works out for Vladimir Putin, China might be emboldened to make their own moves. Tehran might be emboldened to make their own moves. On the other hand, if it is very much a rejection of the idea of Putin of taking over a country, then perhaps that will also influence their thinking as to what can and cannot be done for their own interests. So yes, I don't think we can predict very closely because we cannot. I hope to be as optimistic as the professor, but I don't see it happening in 2 weeks, to be perfectly honest. I hope it is. I hope it does, because the economic effects on every single person in the world has been enormous. And it is going to be enormous for a good long while. It's not going to go away anytime soon.
Sir, since we have a mutual defense treaty with the United States, that would affect, I'm sure that would play a role in how, our country position ourselves in this new geopolitical world order. So my question is, to what extent will you allow the United States influence your actual decision making in how you're going to craft the future foreign policy of the Philippines when that new world order has already taken shape?
Well, we have a very special relationship with the United States, and it's something that we have had and developed over 100 years, starting from being essentially a colony to a very strong partner here, especially in this part of the world, in the region. And that, I think, has been a good thing for both countries, both for the United States and for the Philippines. And that I think we can still depend on that. But the scenario that you spoke about, where we historically have always been with the United States, is still, I think, a carryover, a hangover of the Cold War. And we discussed it a little bit the last time. And I don't think the geopolitics of today are the same. And we now have to tread that very fine line to make sure that it's the Philippines, it's the Philippine interests that are the primacy of Philippine interests in anything. Now, in geopolitics, especially, we have another superpower 600 kilometers from our coastline, China. That puts, again, the Philippines in quite a precarious position. We're lucky because we're important geopolitically, even just strategically. We are unlucky because we are important geopolitically, and we've become a bit of a hot potato when it comes to that. So we definitely have to consider what is best always for the Philippines. And how do we achieve that? With our existing partnerships, alliances, as they stand now, with what will be a new world order. Will it be a very big change? Will it be a small, slight change? Will it be a big change for Russia and a small change for everybody else? There are many moving parts to this thing, and it's not something that is easily definable. But I think once the peace agreement is made, we will study it very, very closely, and we will ask our best experts to determine what is the effect in these other countries. What is the effect to Tehran, to Iran? What's the effect? How does it change their thinking in Beijing? How does it change the thinking in Washington, D.C.? These are the big players. These are the people we have to deal with. So yes, it's that. I wish I could give you a categorical answer, but until we know exactly what that peace treaty will contain, it's very difficult to know what will happen after that in Russia. How will the power structure change? Will there be, will Putin be removed? Will he still maintain his position? All of these things are going to play a part in what it will look like after that peace agreement.
Senator, good evening. With this as a backdrop, the discussion with Russia, Ukraine, I was wondering if you can pivot to domestic concerns, particularly your energy policy.
Yeah.
Because as you said, the conflict is being felt worldwide, and among the things that we are seeing are sky-high fuel prices. But how would you address this? What would be your policies, particularly with energy security, going beyond this issue?
In the past week or so, since the war in Ukraine began, I have been espousing a policy of subsidizing all oil imports. Because the idea is that yes, transport is the first sector that's going to be affected, but everyone will be affected, and therefore if we are to support everyone, we have to subsidize all oil imports, in my view. However, I have been crunching the numbers. We can't do it. We cannot afford it. It's that simple. So we have to focus now. Now, maliwanag, yung mga transport group talagang naghihingalo dahil dito sa pagtaas ng presyo ng langis. Pero alam naman natin, pag tumaas ang presyo ng langis, sabay-sabay susunod na yung mga iba. So we have to focus in the sectors that will actually that will mitigate the effects of the oil price rise. Perhaps there still exists the option of perhaps giving a tax holiday on the excise taxes to the oil for the oil imports. However, the pandemic is not over. We do not know what is going to happen next. When each time we thought tapos na, it came back. And I'm sure all of us after Christmas, after the Omicron hit at the end of January, sabi natin siguro baka tapos nito, baka wala na. But then we hear news now about Korea, about China, about Hong Kong, that they're locking down again. So we need those funds. Well, the government doesn't need the funds, people need the funds. And so we will still have to continue to collect as much as we can in preparation for any possible occurrence in terms of the pandemic. Baka may bagong strain, baka may babalik. But I don't think we will ever return to a time of lockdown anymore.
Senator, just before we go on break, I was wondering if you can clarify your position on the oil price stabilization fund. You say there's been some talk in social media to report, and I don't know if you are. Of course, the appeal is that there will be subsidy when prices are high. But the downside is that prices will remain high because when global prices dip. And there's the argument, of course, that the market is always more efficient in determining prices. Could you clarify your position?
No, I think it is not to change the price of the oil. It's to change the rate of change. It is to try and mitigate the rate of change. So that let's say, if the price increase is from Sunday to Monday, instead of increasing the full, let's say we're going to increase by, I don't know, 5 pesos, let's say. Instead of doing it all in one shot, we do it slowly because we have a stabilization fund. There is no way to bring the price of oil down from the Philippines. We are at the mercy of the oil producers. We in the Philippines, if I'm not mistaken, are 0.07% of the fossil fuel market. Therefore, have very little influence on pricing, and we produce very little in terms of oil production. Malampanes, about this they say will dry up in the next 2 or 3 years. So yes, it is a very, very big problem. But the OPSF that I proposed is really to lessen the impact, and instead of making the impact instantaneous, we will try to make it happen over a longer time to give businessmen, consumers more time to adjust and to plan. for the new regime of oil prices and oil products that would come to the Philippines.
At si ano, kung may time pa.
We'll have to take a short break for now. Yes. Yeah, unfortunately, I've become the symbol of the human time clock. But the panel will still have a lot of questions for you, Senator Marcos. Unfortunately, we have to interrupt for a short break. So to everyone watching, don't go away. The Deep Probe SMNI presidential interviews will be right back. Nagsisimula pa lang ang ating laban.
Ayokong luto. Luto ba yan?
Inday Mila versus disability. Maalagaan ka.
Ako si Inday Lai. Sasamahan kita. Ako po si Inday Jane. Isang Inday. Handang maglingkod.
Ako si Inday Sara. Hawak kamay tayo sa tagumpay. Inday will always love you.
Wala. Ayoko yan. Ayoko nga luto. Luto naman yung bibili mo. Oo. Wala ng pansit. Wala ng pansit. Wala na daw po. Ano na lang? Ano bang ulam dyan? Kasi ano na yan eh. Nakapunan na yan eh.
Magpatuloy ang magagandang layunin at programang inilatag mo sa ating bansa na inumpisahan ng ating mahal na Pangulong Rodrigo Roa Duterte na may tapang at may malasakit ang core values of
Malayo,
public
diba?
service.
Ako rin po ang dating pinuno ng Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission, ang opisinang itinatag ng Pangulong Duterte para pangunahan ng kanyang kampanya laban sa korupsyon.
Proteksyonan at magiging boses ng mga kababahihan, ng kabataan at ng mga luman ng bansang Pilipinas.
Sana. Alas
Partido,
9 na eh.
subok na maasaan. Tandaan,
Ewan, baka alas
ang
11.
bayan ng Pilipinas.
Papunta ka na doon?
Mga kababayan, iboto natin
Tapos bibili ka rin yung kawali.
sa Senado. Matalino, matapang, at may malasakit. At lubos ang pagmamahal. Kung gusto ninyo ako pasalamatan,
Bibili ka rin yung
ipanalo
kawali.
natin si San Panelo sa Senado. Kay San Panelo, manalo ang Pilipinas.
Number 50 sa Malota. Ringo Honasan po
Patayin
sa
ko na.
pagbangon ng mga Pilipino
Saludo sa mga taong patuloy na humaharap sa hamon ng pagbabago.
Sige.
Bilang sundalo, tinataya ko ang aking buhay para sa ating kapayapaan.
Sa panahon ng pandemya, kami ang patuloy na humaharap sa frontline 24 oras.
Kaming mga guro ang gumagabay sa edukasyon ng mga kabataan.
Sa panahon ng krisis, ikaw, ako, magtulungan tayo. Linggo o nasan mo. Saludo ako sa Pilipinas.
This portion is brought to you by Vice Presidential Candidate Mayor Inday Sara Duterte, e-Tax Point, the Philippines' first tax-based accounting software, Frontliners, ikaw ang bida party list, and PDP Laban Senatorial Slate, mapapalakas Bayang Pilipinas. This portion is brought to you by ALV Events International, official event partner, The Manila Times, official media partner, and Okada Manila, official venue partner.
Ibabalik po tayo sa The Deep Probe, the SMNI Presidential Candidates Interview. And right before the break, the conversation between presidential candidate Senator Marcos and the panelists was spanning several issues, including the geopolitical conflicts and the oil price crisis. Now we will resume the questions from the panels.
Magandang gabi po, Senador. Good evening, Alex. Ang katanungan ko po ay tungkol sa power. Alam niyo po, yung IPIRA, inati yung bansa natin, Electric Power Reforms Industry Act, IPIRA. Yan po, ganito. Recently, ang Malacanang po ay naglabas. Pinirmahan ng Pangulo, Executive Order 164, adding nuclear power to the energy mix. And among others, to study the viability kung pwede po natin i-operate yung BNPP at ang iba pang mga facilities para sa paggamit ng nuclear energy. Pwede mo malaman kung ano yung isip nyo po tungkol dito. Kasi po mangyayari sa sunod na termino, ang 18 milestones. Ito po yung unang hakbang lamang.
Marami talagang pinag-uusapan. Energy is hard. Ito, aaminin ko sa inyo, talagang pinag-aaralan ko, napakahirap ayusin. Dahil nga, yung ating sistema, the imperial law, marami talaga nakakontain dyan na kailangan pag-aralan ulit. Because ang reklamo sa buong bansa, both na consumers lamang at saka yung mga negosyante. Kasi lagi natin napapag-usapan mga foreign investors na nagre-reklamo sa power, pati local investors. Kaya ang investment sa Pilipinas is not capital intensive. May mga investment sa Pilipinas short term lang, kung minsan hot money lang, pumapasok, labas lang yan. He doesn't build anything. So, that is it. It is a major problem. Kung titignan natin ang mga projection sa pangyayari, just to as a perfect example, narinig na siguro naman ng lahat, na sinasabi na baka sa eleksyon, magkakaroon ng brownout. Kaya dahil nasa gitna na tayo ng summer, ng pag-araw. Kaya dyan ang maliwanag na maliwanag, kulang na talaga ang power supply doon sa ating requirements. At saka, yung idadagdag pa dapat natin para makapag-industrialize tayo ng mabuti. Kaya that's something that has to be attended to. In other words, kailangan natin lahat. Kailangan natin lahat ng makuha natin na power sources para mabigyan tayo ng mas mura at mas malawak at mas reliable na power supply. Ngayon, maaari natin i-expand yung ating hydro, expand natin yung ating geothermal. But there's a very simple idea when it comes to the energy sector. It's something called the base load. The base load is the load that never goes away. Just the demand that never goes away. Kahit gabi, kahit araw. Ito na yung mga planta na nagpapatakbo. So that base load has to be satisfied. Kaya kung hindi umihip ang hangin, paano yung wind power? Kung gabi, paano yung solar power? Kailangan pa rin yung traditional. Ngayon, doon tayo mamimili. Although it's not traditional for the Philippines, nuclear power is already considered a traditional power source. So it has to be looked into. Yung sa BNPP, nag-offer na, because if you, Korea has, I believe, 5 sister plants to the Westinghouse plant in BNPP. And they have offered, I always say it's ironic that the names of their plants are Core 1, Core 2, Core 3, Core 4, Core 5. Pero tayo, hindi tayo nagkaroon kahit isa. But they have offered to come with their technical people, and they have offered to come to give us an idea. Pwede po. Because kahit pa paano, it was
Kung ka kasi magbukas, hinihilo.
Luluko PLDT. Pwede naman natin i-back yun. Mahuli na.
Ano ba yun? Ano naman ang alis ko? Kamay niyo eh.
power generation. And what happened, nagtaas na ng presyo kasi walang kapalit sa renewable. Ibig sabihin, yung mix
To study the viability, kung pwede pa natin i-operate yung BNPP at ang iba pang mga facilities para sa paggamit ng nuclear energy. Pwede mo malaman kung ano yung isip nyo po tungkol dito. Kasi po mangyayari sa sunod na termino, ang 18 milestones. Ito po yung unang hakbang lamang.
marami talagang pinag-usap yung energy is hard. Ito, amingin ko sa inyo, talagang pinag-aaralan ko, napakahirap ayusin. Lalo na yung hirap ayusin na foreign investors na nagre-reklamo sa power. Pati local investors. Kaya ang investment sa Pilipinas is not capital intensive. Yung mga investment sa Pilipinas short term lang, kung minsan hakma nilang bumapasok, clubs lang yan. He doesn't build anything. So that is it. It is a major problem. Kung titignan natin ang mga projection sa pangyayari, ngayon, just as a perfect example, narinig na siguro naman ng lahat, na sinasabi na baka sa eleksyon, magkakaroon ng brownout. Kaya dahil nasa gitna na tayo ng summer, nag-araw. Kaya yan ang maliwanag, kulang na talaga ang power supply doon sa doon sa ating requirements. At saka, yung idagandang pa dapat natin para makapag-industrialize tayo ng mabuti. Kaya that's something that has to be attended to. In other words, kailangan natin lahat. Kailangan natin lahat ng makuha natin na power sources para mabigyan tayo ng mas mura at mas malawak at mas reliable na power supply. Ngayon, maaari nating i-expand yung ating hydro, expand natin yung ating geothermal, but there's a very simple idea when it comes to the energy sector. It's something called the base load. The base load is the load that never goes away. The demand that never goes away. Kahit gabi, kahit araw. Ito na yung mga planta na nagpapatakbo. So that base load has to be satisfied. Kaya kung hindi humihip ang hangin, paano yung wind power? Kung gabi, paano yung solar power? Kailangan pa rin yung traditional na doon tayo mamimili. Although it's not traditional for the Philippines, nuclear power is already considered a traditional power source. So it has to be looked into. Yung sa BNPP, nag-offer na, because if you, Korea has, I believe, 5 sister plants to the Westinghouse plant in BNPP. And they have offered, I always say it's ironic that the names of their plants are Core 1, Core 2, Core 3, Core 4, Core 5. Pero hindi tayo nagkaroon kahit isa. But they have offered to come with their technical people, and they have offered to come to give us an idea kung pwede pa ba ito. Because kahit pa paano, it was the BNPP, the Botanical Power Plant, was supposed to go online with 650 megawatts in 1986. That's a long time ago. Marami ng bagong technologies, marami ng bagong requirements. So we'll see. We have to. I think we should be open to our Korean friends to come and to tell us if this is still viable or if you have to do something else. When it comes to nuclear power as an idea, let's just follow the science. Because dito naging political sa Pilipinas. It's also political in other places. But in our particular case, the reason we have no power plant, nuclear power plant at all is pure politics. Did not really follow the science. So we have to look into it. Because, even after Fukushima, when everybody was saying nuclear power is going to, we have to rethink, kailangan natin pag-aralan ulit yan, mukhang delikado. Walang nagbago ng kanilang pagplano na pagpatayo ng nuclear power plant kahit saan. Amerika tuloy-tuloy pa rin. Sa France, the majority of their power is already created by nuclear power. So in the other countries, ganun din. So I still think that it's something we should examine. There are many new technologies. One of the ones that we keep reading about are the modular nuclear power plant. They start with a small one. Gusto mong palaki, bumili ka ulit ng module, ikakabit mo ng palaki na gusto mo. Siguro naman kaya natin patakbuhin ang nuclear power plant. Wala naman, there's no reason na bakit hindi kaya ng Pilipino na magpatakbo ng nuclear power plant. So, it's something that should be part of the mix. Kasama diyan is COP26, where we decided to cut down on coal-fired power generation. And what happened, nagtaas na ng presyo kasi walang kapalit sa renewable. Ibig sabihin, yung mix ng renewable at saka traditional, kailangan talaga natin, we have to decide once and for all, what is the mix that is good for the Philippines. I think it's not going to be a static point. I think as years go on and we develop renewables, we develop other sources of power, that mix is going to slowly shift towards renewables, hopefully, because that's what we want because of climate change. But nonetheless, that mix is still something that's up in the air that we haven't really determined what is proper and appropriate for the Philippine setting. But to make a short answer to your question, is that lahat kailangan natin. Kailangan natin palaki ng hydroelectric, kailangan natin palaki ng geothermal, kailangan natin na paramihan ng mga power plant, kailangan natin tumingin sa mga bagong technologies, wind farm, solar, kailangan natin tingnan ng nuclear. Kung kailangan talaga, di balikan natin oil farm. But oil farms has become less and less attractive because of what's happening in the volatility of oil prices, especially in the last 2-3 years. Then with this new development in Ukraine, talagang kailangan pag-isip-isipan natin na mabuti. Kasi baka maipit tayo, pag tumaas na naman yan, hindi natin may patakbo yung planta natin, balik na naman tayo sa dati, nasa brownout na naman tayo. Now we have lots of coal here in the Philippines. The Chinese claim to have good enough technology. I've actually visited one of their coal-fired plants that na malinis na. That they're able to extract the carbon and they're able to dispose of the carbon properly. So all of these things we need to look into. Lahat yan kailangan natin.
Well, after the generating companies, meron po tayong Transco. Mga reklamo sa Transco. Senador, open ba kayo sa idea na katulad ng tubig, may west sector operator, may east sector operator, chop natin ang Transco?
I don't think so. May economies of scale yan. Ang business model ng high tension na delivery na ginagamit ng Transco is the same as a tollway. You maintain the tollway, you collect toll, and that's how you pay for what you build. That's the same thing that Transco should be doing. Yun lamang siguro na hindi sapat. Sa amin lang, marami kaming pangangailangan dyan sa Transco. We were hoping to build a high-tension cable from Ilocos Norte to directly export the power we are producing by windmills directly to Manila because that's where the demand is. And it's more profitable for us. But hanggang ngayon, hindi pa nangyayari. And I'm not sure, I'm not privy to the board meetings and the discussions going on in Transco. So I do not know quite why wala pa yan. But yes, it really should be a simple operation na tayo. Madali lang naman patakbuhin dapat yan. Kaya pag-aralan natin kung bakit nagkakaroon ganun. You mentioned Ipira. We have to look back at Ipira. I think Ipira might already have at least certain provisions in Ipira are already obsolete. As a matter of fact.
Senator?
Yes.
I hope you don't mind. I'd like to switch because we have a short period to ask so many issues. I'd like to ask about agriculture because you mentioned that in the last time you were here. One of the biggest problems that the sector is facing is the aging of farmers.
Yes.
One study I've read said that their average age is between 57 and 59. And the worst thing is their children don't want to go into agriculture. And this observation is supported by declining enrollment in agricultural programs of SUCs across the nation. And last, the Secretary of Agriculture last year said that we may be facing a critical shortage of farmers in as little as 12 years, and he said this last year. So maybe you'd like to share with us what your plans are regarding this issue.
Regarding the age of farmers getting older, not only are they discouraged to come in, their parents who are farmers, they say, wag na kayong pumasok dito, napakahirap ng buhay dito. Mag-aral kayo, pumunta kayo sa Manila, pumunta kayo sa city, dyan kayo magpagaling para hindi nyo na kailangan daanan itong dinadaanan namin. That's the state of the agriculture in the Philippines today. As a general rule, as a general concept, I think we have to really shift already from what is essentially still mom and pop operation and talk about agribusiness. And talk about the industry of agriculture. And there are many things that we need to do to achieve that, to get to that point. See, let's go back to the issue of the age of our farmers and the young people who are not going into agriculture. if it is an agribusiness, if it is not the traditional farming method that we are always going through, that we have been doing for the last millennia, but move into something that is more high-tech, then that will necessarily need for the entry into more technically minded agribusiness practitioners, and that will bring the age younger immediately. I know already for myself, young people in their 30s who have discovered some new technology or have come across a new thing, bagay sa atin to, gawin natin. And they do, and they have brought all kinds of new techniques to farming, but it's not yet extensive because there are no encouragements coming from government in terms of tax breaks, in terms of I don't really believe in subsidies in that regard, but I still think that we can improve the attractiveness of the agricultural sector to younger people if we use the most modern, most interesting technology. And the kids say they can geek it up. They'll just pag-aaral nila ng mabuti. That's a very interesting. It will become very interesting.
Is there an important role for government to play? Because if you look at the public spending on agriculture in the Philippines, it's only about 1.7% of the national budget, far below what is being spent in other ASEAN countries.
It's been that, and it has been that way for a long time. I think we have really neglected agriculture because we had a system set up where the entire value chain was attended to by government. And of course, the private sector practitioners come into the picture during the trading and in the market. But that was dismantled in 1986 and has not been a replacement for it. So we have to do it again. And if we look at the countries that we are competing with in terms of rice production, for example, there Thailand and Vietnam, the obvious ones. Their cost of production is lower. The labor segment of their production cost is 1/2 of ours. And that's due to mechanization. We have not mechanized at all. It's going to take, it's not a simple thing because we have to organize now large, to be able to mechanize properly, to use the big machines, the big tractors, the big harvesters. Yung nakikita natin sa ibang bansa na ginagamit na kalaki-laki, na ang bilis-bilis, siguro sa isang araw, ilang hektarya na nakukover nila. Pero ang average na land holding dito sa Pilipinas is less than 1 hectare. So hindi mo magamit yung mga ganung klaseng makina. So the way to do it, or the way we did it in Ilocos, was we organized the cooperatives. And in that way, we were able to take full advantage of economies of scale. And I think that's what we need to do here in the Philippines now. But there are other things that need to be done as well. We have, I think the fact that we are importing galunggong has been made very, very public. It's been very, very clear that it is quite a surprise for us to get into that situation. But again, it really comes from a neglect and the agricultural sector. So the things we have to do the research and development for the new varieties, for the new nag-alaga na hayop, paano yung gagawin yung pagkalat ng mga inahin. Again, these are different schemes that we have to put together. In our fisheries, there is a very, very good potential for us kung ayusin lang natin ang ating kinukuha ng isda. Number one, bigyan natin yung mga mangingisda na mas malaking bangka. Maliliit lang yung bangka nila eh. And they have to go out already 12 kilometers kasi overfish na dito sa loob. And then of course, patrol so that maraming nagpo-poke sa atin. So we have to have all the best techniques and technologies for our farmers and for our fishermen. fisher folk. So that's just the beginning of it. And then the support. Now, one of the biggest problems that the agricultural industry is facing right now in terms of crops is urea is 2,500 pesos now. And we know of many areas where farmers just didn't plant. And that kills the production. Kaya sa naman ang importation natin. Because importation, kung minsan, kung kulang talaga, kulang talaga. Kung pabayaan mo yan, tataas naman ang presyo, hindi na kaya ng tao. Kaya talagang kailangan ayusin yung agrikultura. So you have to support, the government has to support that. This question of urea, for example, siguro ang gobyerno nang bibili in bulk, hundreds of tons of urea, and then isama na yan sa production loan. Bago planting season, magbibigay ka ng production loan sa farmer. Yung iba pera, yung iba seedlings, yung iba abono, the fertilizer, at saka yung pesticide. And then you could support them with new techniques, the techno demos, teach them what are the new plants, what are the new techniques, how you can save water, how you can save on the other inputs, etc., etc. And then the processing. You know, it is not, should not really be allowed anymore. Dapat in the year 2022, dapat wala na tayong nakikitang palay na tinutuyo sa highway. Dahil dapat meron na tayong binigay. Yeah, si Rolex knows this well from, because sa local talagang yun ang problema eh. So, tapos yung mga milling, dapat talaga meron tayong milling na mga small scale, large scale, depending on what everyone. So the value stays with the farmer. Hindi pumupunta sa trader na may malaking milling na planta. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the traders. They have a part to play. But let's keep as much of the value added and give it back to the farmer. And then, if we are able to do that, gumanda ang ating production, bumura ang ating production cost, we can directly sell it. And the kadiwa is the example that we always use. We can sell it to the public at a lower price, assuming the government will not make a profit, because the government should not make a profit. So they should be able to sell these basic agricultural products for less.
Mr. Marcos, we all know that your campaign's theme is unity. And recently, you made a statement on an issue that, you know, would test your call for unity, because this issue is really polarizing in our country, and I'm referring to your statement on LGBTQ rights. And so my question is, you know, there are a lot of interests that have to be balanced here, especially that even though that we are a secular country, our people, you know, around 80% of our people have really, really strong religious beliefs, and these two things, you know, are always contrary to each other. So my question is, how will you balance the legitimate aim of protecting the rights and welfare of LGBTQ people while at the same time respecting the legitimate interests of religious groups that they can freely pursue their belief on this matter?
I don't think LGBTQ issues are polarizing in the Philippines. Honestly. I think we are much more open-minded about it, considering the fact that we are in fact a very Roman Catholic country. But then you must, and so that I don't think it's polarizing at all. I think Filipinos are, I don't know how to put it, but we're much cooler than most other places when it comes to these things. So, and I think when I talk to the members of that community, wala namang hinihingi na special treatment ng mga LGBTQ. Huwag lang, do not discriminate against us. Yun lang naman yun eh. We don't want a special program for you, for ourselves. We don't want to, do something. Just patas lang. Patas lang, pare-pareho lang. Na kahit LGBTQ kami, kahit matanda kami, kahit we come from the wrong place, I don't know, whatever. all forms of discrimination are some things that we have to guard against because that's corrosive. It just gets in the way. It doesn't help. It doesn't help anything. So that I think is the approach to LGBTQ issues: is just fight discrimination every step of the way. There's a pool of talent in every sector of our society that we need to take advantage of, and so we cannot exclude anybody and say hindi pwede yan, hindi na ayaw namin sa ganyan. And let me get to the point. I mean, LGBTQ, Roman Catholic, you say that it's wrong. What did the Pope say when he was asked about same-sex marriage, same-sex union? Let me correct myself. Same-sex union. And I think the Pope said it perfectly. Who am I to judge? And that's the attitude that we all
Who am I to
should
judge?
have. With that, I think that we'll go down the correct way. We will go down the right path.
Kaya lalo siyang mahalin lang ng mga
And Professor Carlos, I know that you warned me about senior citizens losing their train of thought, but I have been instructed to go on a commercial break. So we'll stop
Dapat
now.
lang magtanong.
Yes, I'll start the next.
May follow-up question eh.
Okay, promise that. Yeah. So, okay.
Gusto mo na sabi niya
Thank you,
meron
everyone. We
na
have
siyang
more
1,000
questions coming
questions.
from our panel. So, don't go away. The
Sarap
Deep
na sarap
Road
silang
SMNI
magtanong.
Presidential Candidates Interview will be right back.
Siyempre, ang tanong lang nila sa kanila, may second cycle eh. Yung sa kanila isang galing niya kasi wala man lang alin lang sa mga sagot.
Comment nila sa live. Ang gaganda ng kulay. Kaya na tayo!
Nagla-live ako.
Tulot pa ako na.
Malapit na yan. Pakinggan lang natin yung last. Ang galing eh. Palakpak yung mga LGBT. Who am I to judge? Tama naman. Yun ang sinabi ni Pope eh. Si Pope John Paul II ata nagsabi nun, magaling din yung Pope na yun.
Isip tungo sa magandang buhay.
Ako si Inday Sara. Hawak kamay tayo sa tagumpay. Inday, will always love you.
Kaya maraming magmamahal sa kanya dyan LGBT group.
Gapang? Gapang? Gapang doon? Ano sa'yo?
Nagising siya sa amoy ng chicken.
Maganda ng mga comment, no? Lalabasan na ng
Wait
mga
lang,
trolls
Dix.
dyan.
Tapusin muna natin itong mga...
Yung mga trolls.
Si Marcos, basta buti na gano'n.
Yung mo sa kanya ang tagalo. Tagal sa kanya, ilang oras na. Ang oras na. Maligit sa oras na.
Lalaban namin yung karapatan sa Kongreso. Frontliners, kayo ang biyak.
Pagpatuloy ang magagandang layunin at programang inilatag mo sa ating bansa na inumpisahan ng ating mahal na Pangulong Rodrigo Roa Duterte na may tapang at may malasakit ang core values ng public service.
Ako rin po ang dating pinuno ng Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission, ang opisinang itinatag ng Pangulong Duterte para paunahan ang kanyang kampanya laban sa korupsyon.
Proteksyonan at magiging boses ng mga kababahihan, ng kabataan at ng mga lungan ng bansang Pilipinas.
Ito ang partido subok na maasahan. Tandaan, malakas ang bayan ng Pilipinas.
Nagapit si Bongbong Marcos. Kapalag. Kapalag. Nagpapalagay.
totoo lang, sayang na sayang pag nakalimutan ninyo si Rodante Marcoleta. Yung prinsipyo, matino, at sa lahat ng trabaho niya has always been with integrity and the performance at the best. Just remember Marcoleta.
This portion is brought to you by Vice Presidential Candidate and Mayor Inday Sara Duterte, e-Tax Point, the Philippines' first tax-based accounting software, Frontliners Ikaw ang Bida Party List, and PDP Laban Senatorial Slate, Mapapalakas, Bayang Pilipinas. This portion is brought to you by Senator Juan Miguel Zubiri, Deputy Speaker Rodante Marcoleta,
Puro yung
Secretary Ringo Honasan, Agimat Party List, and Skin Magical.
Pag-iingat po din.
Ang anak ni Bok. Tawa. Wow,
We're back with a Deep Pro, the SMNI presidential candidates interview. And again, 1 hour went by so quickly. So we're down to the last question for our last candidate for the evening. To start off with our last question, Professor Carlos.
Okay, there is, I know, Mr. Marcos, that
Professor Carlos, I know you're gonna love me for this. You're wearing your sunglasses again.
Ay, mag-forgive na kayo, ha? You will all be 75 also. Unless you die young. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a sense that this will be the last time I shall interact with you in a venue like this. So, let me introduce something which I have tested in my class on elites in politics. And this involves moving into an area called predicting leadership, decision making. So I hope you don't mind if I give you 3 short questions, but they are related to each other. And it will give our people a chance to know you in terms of your leadership style. The first question is, do you think that you're basically an optimist rather than a pessimist? Number 2, do you think you are basically a high-risk taker rather than a low-risk taker? You'll notice the 2 are related. And the third question is, do you think you're Machiavellian?
Nasarapan.
Well, the first question is if I'm an optimist or a pessimist. I'm essentially an optimist. And the reason I'm essentially an optimist, because especially when we talk about the country, we are optimists. I am optimistic because our biggest asset is the Filipino people. I try to be very objective about it, and I have traveled all over the world. I have not met a better people than Filipinos in every continent. Am I a risk taker or not? When it comes to national issues, I am 10 towards a conservative only because a mistake will cost so much suffering to so many people. In other words, you have to be very careful with the decisions you make. And it's not something that you do offhand. You think about it very hard. You talk to as many people as you can. And you make absolutely certain that you have done everything that you can possibly do to make whatever your plan is, to make it work. Am I Machiavellian? Well, I've studied him quite thoroughly, and I know very many Machiavellians in my life. But
It's not Machiavelli in terms of taking every means
Yes,
to
yes.
produce an end. Not the other Machiavellian, the bad Machiavellian.
Well, certainly, we have to be aware of everything that is going to help whatever it is that you are hoping to achieve. And on a national scale, that means you have to understand very well what the situation is on the ground. Ganito kasi, sitwasyon ng mga tao, eto na ngayon sila. Nasa gitna pa ng pandemic, nagtrabaho yung mga yan, umaasa pa rin yan sa tupad, sa IX, etc. O paano tayo lalabas na? Where will they, what are the other countries doing? Kailangan maging maingat so I suppose in the same sense, as you said, these questions were related, it's a way of being careful and being very, very knowledgeable about what are the things that have to come into play so that you will achieve success, whatever that success, however you define that success. So in that sense, yes, ma'am, I am a Machiavellian.
Yeah, thank you. In future, if you have time, please come to the university and I will discuss with you. It's called the Operational Code Construct. Thank you very much.
Hindi pa nasiyahan. Kulang pa. Invite pa.
So sorry, I know we were getting requests for extension, but we want to be strict about keeping it to 1 hour for all the presidential candidates. So, Senator Marcos, you have the floor for your closing remarks.
Well, first of all, I thank again our panelists and SMNI for this opportunity to speak on the many issues that have yet to be explored. And the format as well, I think, is quite constructive. So thank you to SMNI for that. Thank you to our panelists here. I hope to continue to lay out what programs that form a part of the platform, the platform for the possibility for the next administration, for the possibilities for the next administration. And that's why opportunities such as this are very, very important. And I hope that we have been able to impart some of the ideas that I'm examining and trying to put together to bring to the next administration should I be elected to the presidency. So we hope that we continue with this discussion. I hope that people come and think about it. And if they have any ideas, please come and tell us because we need to hear from everyone. We need everyone. That is the drive. The unity theme is that we cannot say that anyone is not needed. Everyone is needed in this effort that we are trying to do to get through the pandemic, to recover our economy from the problems that the pandemic has brought, and to position the Philippines to face the new world order and what will happen in the next few years. So thank you all very much, and thank you for the opportunity. Magandang gabi po sa inyo.
Yan ang presidente. Isip, salita at sa gawa. Presidente. BBM. BBM. BBM.
Maraming salamat po, Senator Bongbong Marcos, and maraming salamat to all our panelists. Sa pamamagitan ng SMNI Deep Probe, sinubok namin na dalhin sa ibang level ang pagkilatis sa ating mga presidential candidates. After all, the presidential post is the highest position of leadership in our country. Napakahalagang desisyon ang pagpili natin ng susunod na Pangulo ng ating bansa. We hope that today's Deep Probe gave people an opportunity to further scrutinize our candidates. Thank you to all our candidates who joined us today. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to get to know you more. And of course, thank you to the panelists for sharing your expertise. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight.
36K, oh.
Hindi, oh. Grabe.
Tignan mo, eh. Lalapit sila dyan.
Lahat, mahal na mahal na yan eh. Lahat sila. Tuwa sa kayo. Sabi kayo, LGBT. Yan, magaling. Represent congressman yata rin.
Ito po natunghayan ang The Big Group, the SMNI Presidential Candidates Interview sa Mayo ang 9. Muling
boboto
pagtitibayan natin
namin
mga
yan.
Pilipino ang kapangyarihang pumili ng susunod na mga lingkod ng bayan.
Silang magpapatuloy ng pagsusulong ng pagbabago sa ating bansa. Silang makakakuha ng tiwala ng taong bayan.
Sa muli, maraming salamat po sa aming pinakamamahal na Honorary Chairman, Reverend Dr. Pastor Polo C. Kibuloy, sa pagkakataong maging kabahagi ng pagbibigay serbisyo sa ating mga kababayan sa pamamagitan ng paghahatid ng ganitong uri ng programa. Ako po si MJ Mondial.
And of course, sa ating mga kandidatong dumalo ngayong gabi, maraming salamat sa pagtanggap ng hamon ng The Deep Probe. At ganun din sa ating mga kababayan na patuloy na sumusuporta sa SMNI. Ako si Luz Hamilton. Mabuhay ang Pilipinas nating mahal!
Halik-halik